Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1411-1411. I'm your host, Mike Matthews, broadcasting from Cafe Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, Mont. Today, we hear from Madame Rootabega, Valentino, Bison Bentley. Plus, we get to a news segment that I planned ahead of time to tell you what it was right here. And so right here is where I'm going to tell you it is
Mike's Daily Podcast.
We'll call this one Note to Self. How about that? Note to Self is what this is.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
And I don't really know how I come up with these news segment names. It seems that I like to shame myself into thinking of things to do on this show, and then I dance around and I do-si-do. And then there's a square dance, and at Cafe Anyway, you can dance like you want to.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
You can leave your friends behind, and if your friends don't dance, then you don't need to.
Mike's
your friends, basically.
Daily
No friends.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah!
You know what? This show today is dedicated to Bob, who I ran into while I was walking Basil the Boxer yesterday around Coal Canyon Lake. I said to myself, Coal Canyon Lake has spent all this money on a new paved path that goes down Higher Avenue, and I want to walk on it. And I did, and I ran into Bob. I also ran into the lovely Ashley, who just had her baby. And look who just walked in. And she walks with her baby around with the baby in one of those new wraps. I've never seen them before, these wraps, but I haven't been pregnant lately. And it holds the baby right on your chest. And every time I see her and her baby, the baby is just out, just sleeping. Look who walked up, and just so happy. And Ashley walks her dog Xena, the warrior princess German Shepherd, and Xena always loves seeing Basil, and they start to play. But I think that's great that moms they're not just sitting at home, because home is scary, sitting at home, watching horrible television, because that's all that's on television these days. Except for Game of Thrones, which is supposedly the biggest thing ever, and all these people are doing guest shots on it. Guest appearances. But I don't care, I don't watch it. Hey, she is an inspiration, this Ashley lady. And I always get her Alina. That's it.
And here's today's podcast picture.
That's her daughter's name, because I always think of that song by Donny Iris. Aliyah. Here we go again. Not to be confused with here it comes again. Oh, here we go. Whatever that song was that Irene Pena did. Here it goes again. That's right. Okay, the podcast picture today is of the wonderful San Francisco Maritime Museum. Actually, it was taken from one of the piers there in that Marina Park place, and you see the Ghirardelli behind it. And I bring up San Francisco, Ghirardelli Square, because Bob was performing with a Grateful Dead tribute band, and he was talking about how he was performing at a place in Newark called the Swiss concert venue, Swiss Place. Swiss is in the title. And he said, as he played drums for this band, that they had a really cool light display that harkened back to the 1960s, and this is the Summer of Love. Actually, the 1950s. It's the 50th year anniversary of the Summer of Love. And he said the light display was amazing. Apparently, the light display had been taken from an old one from did he say the Fillmore? So, yes, Bob, I actually listen to you when you talk, pretty much. I'm not specific. If I was to recall specific things from our conversation, I would need note and paper. Paper to pen, as I made a note to self, which is the name of the news segment, as you know, as I aforementioned. But anyway, Cafe Anyway, we had a wonderful discussion about this wonderful light display and about how he would love to see where I work in the radio world. And I said, sure. and it would be great to show him because he's very technical and knows all kinds of digital recording apparatus and has a very interesting history. In fact, Bob, when I have him at a radio station, I will record a segment for my podcast with him because he's a very interesting individual. But I did tell him about how I was recording a show yesterday that for some guys. Okay, so these guys get a free show on the radio station I work for because their organization is some organization that my company wants to be a part of, so they get a free show. And without naming any names, these guys are just totally starting to take this all for granted. People go, ooh, it's exciting. I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to be on the radio, or I'm going to have a radio show. But they don't realize that this takes dedication. Obviously, here we are at 1411, as far as the amount of episodes I've done. You've got to be dedicated, and you got to show up, and you got to have content. And these guys showed up, and they were just technically all over the place. One guy didn't really even want to be here, at Cafe anyway, where we broadcast the Mike's Daily Podcast Show. But no, he didn't want to be at the radio station, and the guy, well, he wasn't even at the radio station. He was calling in, and then they had another guest call in. Now, to those of you who don't really listen to talk radio, this might not mean anything. Here, I'm going to break it down. I know a lot of my friends listen to NPR. You will never, ever hear on NPR the host of the show, like who's the only ones I listen to are on the weekend, the Morning Edition show with Ludo Garcia Navarro, most beautiful name in the world. And she says, when she does the show, she's there in studio, because that's the whole point, is we're a news station. We're broadcasting to you from the headquarters where we are looking for the news. It's like, that's the history of radio. It's always been that way. You have the anchor in studio. This guy was doing the show from his phone and interviewing a guy from the phone, and it just sounded horrible, as you can imagine. Phone talking to phone, and it's fun. And the whole show sounded like this. Hi, how are you today? Oh, I'm doing fine. How are you? Oh, I'm doing great. Oh, that's awesome. How's Bob? Bob's great. Bob's doing good. Bob played in a Grateful Dead band. No kidding. What was the Grateful Dead band's name? Well, it's a tribute band, so it's called the Dead Ceramics. The Dead to Rights. Dead on Arrival. Grateful Grooves. Grateful Guys. I can't think of a good Grateful Dead tribute band name. Darn. Well, as you can imagine. Anyway, I don't understand people. That it infuriates me, because my whole life has been radio, and it drives me nuts. So, as you can tell, that's why I've talked about 8 minutes about it. But MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com has all the past shows and past podcast pictures, and you can see what's the last one I had was of me and Basil. That's right, at Fairmont Ridge, and I got a lot of likes on Facebook for this picture. Usually I get no likes, so this was an awesome picture, I guess. You can see that picture and others and hear past shows at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com, past interviews I've done. You can hear that Here It Goes Again by Irene Pena, who I interviewed on Sunday. You can also help out the show through the Amazon link. Click on that Amazon link, buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and that helps out the show. And there's also PayPal. If you'd like to help us out that way, you'll get a special greeting from all the Cafe Anyway characters. All at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Now the segment.
Note to self.
Let's start with the one, the only. Who is it?
I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Oh, come on. We know who it is. It's Trump. Somehow I don't think this would be his theme music. But, yeah, so Donald Trump, our presidente, his approval rating is unchanged from June, remains at 36%. This according to CBS News. And a couple people wrote this story. Jennifer DePinto, Fred Backus, Kabir Khanna, and Anthony Salvanto. But however, favorable views of the U.S. economy continue to soar to heights not seen in more than 15 years. Now, to my feeble, small mind, that seems counterintuitive. But no. If Haley's listening to this show, Haley's going, why are you talking like Bill Gunderson right now? I don't know, Haley. Bill Gunderson hosts a show on financial radio stations, and he's from San Diego, California. And he talks like this. It's very infectious. The president does get better marks on his handling of the economy than for other issues, but his overall approval rating is partly because Americans say they're evaluating him more on culture and values than on how they're faring financially, and partly because his ratings for other domestic issues are negative. It is only those who are very confident about their own personal financial situation who give the president's approval rating marks a better approval ratings. Meanwhile, Trump's got the fake news. He's done with it. So he's starting anew. Now, this is something, back when he was campaigning, he made some kind of comment where he was talking about if he didn't win the presidency, like he was going to start his own news organization. And he's got a guy from a big, alternative facts news organization, Breitbart, working for him, Steve Bannon. But it's fascinating. I mean, when is a president, it's so weird. To the average person who knows their history, when a president starts their own news organization, that's pretty much what the countries that are being run by dictators, that's what happens there. In the fight against what Trump has decried as fake news about him and his administration, his team has launched their own version of events, taking the president's frequent laments about a lack of media focus on jobs, the stock market, and the economy, and turning it into a weekly video posted to Facebook focusing on that. So that's what it is. It's a weekly video posted to Facebook. Now, that's not the same as a Fox News or a CNN or something, but it is interesting. More great economic news on Friday, said former pro-Trump cable news commentator Kayleigh McEnany in front of a blue Trump-Pence themed wall, giving the real news. She rose to political prominence during the 2016 election for her fiery exchanges in defense of Trump on CNN. She left the network this weekend. Her debut came shortly before she was named a Republican National Committee spokesperson yesterday. So she got 2 jobs in one day. Her kickoff on what could be called Trump TV was shared with more than 22 million Facebook page followers. And on Twitter, Trump's presidential campaign committee is listed as having paid for the news spot. Now, okay, I will agree, though, that this is not the same as Fox News or CNBC, and this will probably be the way presidents get news out in the future. It just, when you hit, it's... So, more on that later. I'm sure that will become more interesting as time goes on. But at the moment, it's not. I've lost interest in it. This is sad. Sinead O'Connor, she says she's depressed and suicidal living in a motel in New Jersey. All by myself, she says, and there's absolutely nobody in my life except my doctor, my psychiatrist, the sweetest man on earth who says I'm his hero. And that's about the only thing keeping me alive at the moment, the fact that I'm his bloody hero, and that's kind of pathetic, she said. She posted this video also on Facebook, 12-minute video, saying she's at a Travelodge motel in Hackensack, New Jersey. She weeps through much of it, and she says she suffers from 3 mental illnesses. And, so, excuse me, mental illness is something that, well, it affects us all. And, I'm glad she's got a doctor She's got a psychiatrist helping her. It's not something you can ignore. And we've had a lot of musicians, it seems, that have also had to deal with mental illness in some way. She says she's fighting to stay alive because I love the people that are going this to me. I'm not staying alive for me. If it was for me, I'd be gone. The people who suffer from mental illness are the most vulnerable people on the earth, she says. We can't take of ourselves. She, in 2015, wrote a suicidal note in which she said she was going to intentionally overdose on pills. Just a few days later, after being found alive, she was hospitalized. She then begged her children to visit her in the hospital, children whom she had previously said were dead to me. A few months later, Chicago police issued an alert deeming Sinead missing suicidal after she took off on a motorized Raleigh brand bicycle and didn't return. Around the same time, she posted strange, convoluted messages on social media. On May 16th, she was found safe. In her new video, she said she's begging to be brought home. Wow. So, Sinead O'Connor. Now, I have her second album. And I have actually a couple... I think I got her greatest hits, too. She's done some great music. If she is listening to this, Sinead, we wish you well. Now, a historical figure that we all know about, that many a British TV show has been made about. Jack the Ripper, one of the most famous unsolved murder cases of all time. Now, nearly 130 years later, they've uncovered the identity of the perpetrator. This, according to Mental Floss. It says, as the Telegraph reports, and Mental Floss, by the way, I hear the main hub of Mental Floss is somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama. But it's a great magazine. I used to buy a couple of issues of that when I was like in the magazine section of Borders. Alton Brown is in it a lot. Very interesting, informative, and amusing magazine. But the claim is based on evidence from a diary that belonged to a Liverpool cotton salesman named James Maybrick in the late 19th century. In the diary, Maybrick describes killing 6 women, 5 in London's East End, where the Ripper's historic murders occurred, and 1 in Manchester. He signed the 9,000-word volume, I Give My Name, that all know of me, so history do tell what love can do to a gentleman born. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. But, dramatic music here. Jack the Ripper researchers have been aware of the document since it was discovered 25 years ago. While most experts have been hesitant to take it seriously, one team, led by With Nail and I writer and director Bruce Robinson, now believe it can prove the diary's authenticity. They were able to trace the book back to Maybrick's former home in Liverpool, which challenges the idea that the account was forged long ago after the killing spree took place. Maybrick, an affluent merchant who lived on an estate called Battle Crease House, he died in 1889, 1 year after the last murder attributed definitively to the Ripper. The diary was recovered from beneath the floorboards of his mansion by a group of electrical workers in 1992. From there, it fell into the hands of Mike Barrett, a former scrap metal dealer from Liverpool who kept the origins of its discovery a secret in order to avoid legal repercussions. And finally, Google has fired the male engineer at the center of an uproar in Silicon Valley over the past week after he authored an internal memo asserting there are biological causes behind gender inequality in the tech industry. James Damore, the engineer who wrote the memo, confirmed his dismissal, saying in an email to Reuters yesterday that he had been fired for, quote, perpetrating gender stereotypes. He said he was exploring all possible legal remedies and that before being fired, he had submitted a charge to the U.S. National Labor Relations Board accusing Google and its upper management of trying to shame him into silence. As we go outside a cafe anyway, we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcaster Valley. Next show, we didn't have any of the characters I said I was going to have on today. All right, they're going to come by really quick. Hello, Michael, my suit's Madame Rootabega.
And it's Valentino, the banking attendant.
And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that? All right, thanks, guys. Let's just hang out here at Cafe anyway and tell everybody to come back, because the next show we'll have Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the engineer, and that's a wrap.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Dedicated.